Alright folks, so sometimes I have people asking me what I'm up to for my own businesses, because as I have made clear in this entire YouTube channel, I'm not just doing antique books. I do a whole lot of other things. I have a lot of other interests, I have a whole lot of other things that I'm investing in, all that sort of stuff. So I actually got a couple things in the mail today that sort of compelled me to talk about this, and I also have a little magic string up there that I mentioned in another video, actually in a post about another video, because I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen the string and thought, Caleb, you have a cobweb, clean that cobweb, I'm gonna go crazy, Caleb. So with all that said and done, this is just a little crash course, not very antique booky video, just talking about some of the random stuff that I'm up to and how that will impact me myself, and just sort of my thoughts, all this sort of random train of thought sort of things, if you will. So with that said, the things that I got in the mail today, one of them came from Serbia, believe it or not. Let me cover the person's name. Actually, no, I just won't even show you. But this one came from Serbia, sorry, and I cannot even try to pronounce the street name question mark that this came from, but or the city name. Wow, Serbians have a very interesting language, that's for sure. But this one here is actually, again, it's from Serbia. It's a cool stamp, and it's actually some plant seeds. So these plants are just a particular kind of tree that I'll be planting on a piece of land that I am working on getting. Lord willing, I'll be able to get that sooner rather than later, but it's, again, just something I've been working on. So it's been fun because I've been reaching out to all these people, buying seeds from all these different people, getting things going. Looks like my seeds are in here. There's not a whole lot of them. I just wanted to get yeah, there they are. Just wanted to get a selection of different seeds from different countries for this particular kind of tree, because I just want to make sure I have genetic diversity for when I get my stuff going. So here's just that little packet of seeds. Nothing too exciting. It comes with the little planting instructions. I got a lot of planting instructions from a lot of different people from several different countries, all for this particular kind of tree. I'll probably be telling you guys more about this particular tree in the future as I get all that stuff going, but end of the day, we're getting there one step at a time. Again, this is all for a particular plot of land that I'm working on getting. I will be doing large-scale farming stuff down the road, because that's just what works really well with my current thesis that I'm working on for the economy, for the future economy, and for stuff that I believe will do well for my family for several generations out. For me, I am not a normal person. I'm not planning for my retirement. I'm not planning for the summer vacation I want to take. I'm not planning for my 10-year goal. I am planning for stuff that I hope to last literally generations, many years after I am long gone. I am just trying to make sure that stuff is done well, that foundations are built to ensure that my future family can do as well as humanly possible. I have done lots of stuff. I've been writing stuff down, obviously doing tons of research just on legacy building things. It's actually sort of interesting, a little aside right here. My dad's actually going through some classes on wealth building, all these sorts of things right now himself, with this guy called Ty Lopez, and he's mentioned this guy in the past and talked about this thing, and it's funny because that Ty Lopez guy keeps on talking about, oh yeah, what you want to do is you want to be this kind of person in your community, that sort of stuff. You want to be this, you want to be this. And my dad mentioned me a couple weeks ago. He's like, it's really funny because this guy kept on talking about how you want to do this, this, and this to like ensure this long-lasting success that is a lot more enduring than other sorts of success that you have. And my dad told me, he's like, he's listing off all these things, and I'm just thinking, oh, that's Caleb, oh, that's also Caleb, oh, that's Caleb too, what in the world? And I just personally found a lot of pride in that, if you will, because I was like, yes, this is a very successful man, leading lots of successful people, and it's great to see that my own personal studies have led me to the same conclusions that this guy has come up with, and my personal studies have led me to the conclusion that, I guess I'll bear it all to you guys, that what you sort of want to do to make sure that your family is as well off as possible, to make sure that you are as well off as possible, is to go sort of like for the Baron route. I know a lot of people are like, I'm going to be the king of the world, I'm going to be the emperor, I'm going to be this or this or this, and then other people are like, I'm fine just being a cog in society. You know, I don't want to achieve anything great, because tall poppy syndrome, as soon as you achieve something great, someone's going to come to cut you down to the same height as everyone else, that sort of stuff. But for me, my own studies, I was like, okay, it looks like what you want to do is become a baron. And barons, I'm sure some of you guys know, I'm sure some of you guys are nerds like me, and know that those are the people that held the land of different kingdoms. In fact, there are a lot of baronies still in existence today. Even in areas where there are no longer monarchs, we still have powerful families that were the baronies and still own all these different tracts of lands, these huge tracts of land, which are still producing wealth for that family generations later. I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen the stories about different castles in Europe. And these castles in Europe, they've been in the same family for dozens and dozens of generations. That's what you get when you go sort of the barony route. You want to make sure that you are a baron or a baroness and you have all this land, you have the businesses built, you have recurring income even after you're gone. You have something that is established, something that will last. So with that said, that is sort of the route that I'm going, and I'm just trying to make sure that with the business that I'm working on right now with the farm stuff, that will be setting things up for the best future for my family. Obviously there's going to be lots of stuff that I'll have to teach my future generations to make sure that they are going to treat that land as well as they ought to ensure that it obviously endures for generations. What we've seen in the American agricultural system, and even in agricultural systems around the rest of the world even, is more of a mining style of agriculture, where you are mining all the nutrients out of these out of your soils, turning those soils into lifeless dirt in a few years, because you are not sort of doing things as God designed nature to be run. You are mining all the nutrients again, and honestly, a lot of farms actually, you see the soil afterwards, you see the soil life afterwards, and it might as well have been, that was hard to say, I don't know why, a mine in its previous history, and that mine might have well has just, man, I need to stop. That mine should have just dumped 100,000 tons of toxic waste, basically, with what it has done to the soil. And that soil being stripped of all its life means that life system in the soil is no longer able to provide life to the food, because, guys, planting a plant is not just putting a seed in dirt. You have to water it, but it's not just watering it as well. There is a whole ecosystem of life down in the soil, which actually allows plants to thrive, not just survive. And if you have good soil health, you can actually get huge returns on your plants without having to invest in ungodly amounts of fertilizer. And that fertilizer, believe it or not, actually kills that the soil biome, all that sort of stuff. And I know that sounds some weird hippy-dippy science stuff, but end of the day, that's how it works. I've heard this one several times, there's more life several times over in a single teaspoon of good healthy dirt than there are humans on the entire face of the earth. So I mean, that's a couple of little microbe things in every teaspoon of dirt, if you will. I mean, that's a good amount. But again, if you do all the modern ag stuff, that just murders it all. So obviously it's not just that, there's also lots of stuff about the particular plants you plant, all these sorts of things. Obviously, I've been doing research on this for several years. If you guys have been following my channel for any amount of time, you guys know that I am a research fanatic. I will look up so many things, learn so many things, and get so much stuff done before I take a step more often than not. Of course, there are times where I will not act while I know everything. Sometimes I will act before I've finished all that research, just to ensure that I am actually doing things properly, because sometimes you do have to learn to ride a bike as you're moving, but other times it's best to learn how to fly your rocket ship before you're actually taking off in your rocket ship, if you will. Like, sometimes there's things that you need to get along and risk the crash. Other times it's like, let's not risk that crash. Let's not risk crashing my rocket ship, you know? I hope that metaphor makes sense to you guys. But with all that said, I mentioned the seeds from Serbia. I'm also working on getting some additional seeds and such. Actually, this will be plant material from international markets. So obviously that one's from Serbia, and the rules for importing seeds from abroad are rather lax, if you will. It's a whole lot easier to get seeds across because there's not as much of a risk for the United States agricultural system to get just seeds, because when customs gets it, they can look at it and be like, there's not a bug in here. Whereas for this, I'm actually doing some stuff to do imports for different plant material. So this is actually going to be for this particular tree that I'm trying to get, for rootstock and stumps and that sort of stuff, to get those imported in, because there's still life in those, and this particular tree can actually sprout up from its root. And this is actually going to allow me to get some different hybrids that I cannot get in the United States. I've spent countless hours doing research to try to find these particular hybrids, and I can only find them internationally. And China, where I'm hoping to get these from, is pretty much the best bet for me, because price, it's just so much better, because you get the same thing from Europe and it's at a minimum I'd say about 600 times the cost. So I would much rather spend a fraction of that getting it from China and dealing with the import duties on that side of things. And in addition to that, I live on the West Coast. With the whole port of entry things for this whole thing, it's probably going to be easier for me to try to get it from China. Plus, again, China also has some of the hybrids that I need that even Europe, I couldn't find anything for it. So this is basically just a business decision for me that I'm going down. In addition to this particular tree, I'm hoping to get some other things as well. I need to fill all this stuff out to finish getting all the permits for this, but it's been an interesting journey learning all this stuff about importing plants, because that wasn't anything I ever thought I'd have to worry about and do all this research for. But here I've been doing dozens and dozens of hours just learning the import side of things and talking about things to different vendors, and I'm just like, okay, so what about this, talking to government people, and they're like, oh no, you gotta go to this person. It's been quite the little maze for me to navigate my way through, but it's all part of the big master plan to build something that hopefully will last for many generations, because again, I'm not someone that's planning for my summer vacation. I'm someone that's planning for hopefully what, Lord willing, will be the family farm that begins something that can be a family tradition that begins and becomes something great that my family can do summer vacations at 300 years from now. Like, I'm not dealing with stuff the same way that everyone else is, because it's not about me. It's about the future generations, and it's about the good that we can do for the world, because if you do good for the world, it generates revenue, it generates profit, and gets you goodwill and all these magical sorts of things. The Bible actually says that, I believe it is, I can't remember exactly how it goes, forgive me for that, but in Proverbs, I believe it is, it talks about how the righteous man will release the storehouses of his food in times of need, more or less in times of famine. He'll open up his granaries and sell the food to the market. He's not giving it away, he's actually selling it, and the people will bless his name, that sort of thing. That is sort of what you want to go for in the world. You want to be someone that can, even in times of pain, be able to provide for other people, and you don't need to do it for free. You can still charge money, and people will still acknowledge and appreciate what you've done. And end of the day, if you're getting paid for what you did, that means you can actually maintain that course and continue your business, being able to continue helping people for generations to come if you're able to generate a profit in what you do. If you are giving away everything you get all the time, you're basically like a sieve. You pour the water into the sieve, all the water goes out. What you want to do, guys, is to try to be more like a rain barrel, have it so you can fill up your rain barrel, and occasionally things will overflow. You'll give some things away, if you will, but you will still have the rest of your rain barrel capacity full of water for the times where you need it, where it's like, okay, I need to make sure that this part of my garden's watered, if you will, and the garden in this case is your society around you. Sometimes you need to water that, but you'll get paid for that, all sort of stuff, but all that sort of thing. Don't want to dive too far into that, so apologies for that, but it's been quite the journey. It's been a lot of fun learning all these sorts of things, doing all this research. In the military and in the government, they have these things called war games, where they are basically trying to map out situations, how things will react, all that sort of stuff. And for me, I've basically been spending all these years, all my research, basically war gaming out all these different scenarios for, okay, what if this country comes to power and does this and this and this against the United States? What can I do myself to make sure that my particular empire that I'm building, if you will, my barony, if we're being a little more accurate, what can I do to make sure that this is insulated from the negative repercussions of this at worst, and then at best, what can I do to make sure that I am actually benefiting from this scenario? Because as much as people might say you're dirty for benefiting from a bad scenario, that's how you grow. You do not see the largest businesses and such of the world starting and taking off in times of plenty. You see the best, strongest businesses actually starting in times of need. The Great Depression, guys, created insane amounts of ultra wealthy people back then, and it wasn't because, oh well, Carnegie was so evil, it was because there were people that saw pain, saw these things, and from that were able to basically build a better future immediately because of the bad things that happened. They were able to react to it, they were able to profit from it, yes, but you don't profit from things unless you're providing value to someone else, all that sort of stuff. I don't really want to dive into the philosophy of business, but let's just say business is a net good for society. If you don't agree with that, that means you haven't done yourself a service in actually learning things. You probably just listened to your college professor, and this is the wrong channel for you if you believe anything that you are told by a college professor. But anywho's, that's all that. I'm working on agriculture stuff. I'm working on with the trees, that's also going to be for timber, because timber is a great form for long-term wealth. You can look up the stuff about lumber barons in just the United States alone. Lots of great information there, lots of amazing stuff. And in addition to that, I'm working on food stuff. That'll be part of that whole system. There's this thing called agroforestry, silvopasture, all these things where you implement inside of a forest all these things to grow food. So for me, I'll actually be doing more of a silvopasture sort of thing, but also with some agroforestry magic going on. But what I will hopefully be doing on this land is, for the first several years at least, raising up sheep, because this particular land that I'm looking at is a little more degraded, and degraded land you cannot immediately put cattle on. I mean, you can, but it's going to take a little bit longer for that land to sort of get spruced up to the point that it's doing great. In the perfect world, you could maybe throw out some sheep and cows and have them rotationally graze and doing their magic stuff, but it's sort of difficult to do that for my particular situation, because I'll be going out and doing most of this alone, and personally for me, I don't want to deal with large livestock like cattle and pigs that have a tendency to not always be the nicest to their owners all the time. There are plenty of accidents that occur that I'm just like, yeah, let's not. I have let's see, I believe it's family friends who have told several stories of like, oh yeah, I was handling my cattle out in Eastern Oregon where I'm looking. They're like, yeah, I was handling these cattle, and then all of a sudden there was like just a look in their eye, and they all just started crushing me and attacking me, and it was really bad. And it's just like, yeah, no thank you. I'm gonna fiddle with sheep. I can throw a sheep if that thing starts being mean to me. A cow, I can't as easily throw a cow. Of course, with that said, I'm not gonna be dealing with pigs too much either in my first several years, not until I can get a few more people out on the property with me. Midterm, maybe I'll be getting some like dwarf cow breeds just for the sake of what cows can do for the land, because cows are pretty cool. But I'm just going to be focusing on sheep for the first few years. But why am I mentioning all that? Well, that's actually because of the string right here that I mentioned already. So guys, with me, with sheep, all that sort of stuff, sheep are ruminants. There are different parasites that can negatively impact them, so obviously I'll be running chickens throughout with all my things. And yeah, I don't think you guys came here for a whole thing on agriculture, permaculture, all that sort of stuff, which is what I'm diving into here. But for me, I'm actually going to be running some chickens with them. That'll help with some of the parasites, but there still will be parasite load on all these different animals. And while I'm not necessarily saying I won't try any chemical dewormer on a critter if that critter absolutely needs it, I am personally going to be looking into all these proven forms of dewormers and things that can just limit the load of parasites on your animals, because parasites do kill your animals. So I want to limit that as much as possible. This thing right here, this string, is actually growing a certain kind of leaf. So this is just one of them. This one here is just flattened out. It's missing a little bit here, but this right here, I'd love to hear if you guys could guess what it is. It's got a wonderful smell. It's a little sweet of a smell. And it was grown on plantations in the early days of the United States. I hope I gave you guys enough hints already, if you guys haven't guessed just yet, your guess no longer matters, because I'm spilling the beans on what this is. So guys, what I'm growing here, what I have here on the string is actually, I'm drying some tobacco, and I can't really show you guys that too easily, and I can't move the camera or else the camera's going to wig out, but I actually have a string little tobacco right there that I'm drying out. The tobacco, I'm just practicing with, checking things out on that side of things, because tobacco is supposed to be a really good dewormer for sheep and other ruminants. It also supposedly is supposed to be able to deworm humans. Evidently, in the Vietnam War, U.S. service members would actually eat a cigarette if they knew they had worms in them to clear themselves out. But according to what I've read, tobacco is supposed to be able to deworm a sheep in like under an hour. It'll just like pressure wash the system and get those parasites out in a lot of cases, which is something I'll be experimenting with. However, I also have, so growing up, I would play all these different strategy games, and in one of the strategy games there's like a whole part of the game that was just agriculture, and you're working on the supply chains of this particular agriculture stuff. And it was like, oh yeah, you take your, let's say, hemp, and the hemp could be made into rope or this or this or this, and then you could sell that, all that sort of stuff. So basically it was Farmville before Farmville was a thing. But anywho's, that was one of the things that I was playing around with on that, looking at that game, playing that game, building empires based on basically that, because even back then I was doing my research and I was like, okay, this is how this should work, this is how this should work, all these things, and playing that game, seeing even in that, it's like, okay, well, it's a game, games aren't necessarily a reflection of society. I did some of these things, I was like, you know, one of the things you could grow was tobacco. You could make cigars. I was like, you know, it'd be fun to make a cigar sometime. So that's something I'll actually be doing with my tobacco. I don't smoke whatsoever, but I hope to actually roll a few different cigars with my tobacco, and I'll probably stick them on the back behind me somewhere on display because I think they're really pretty, and to think that I grew that's pretty cool. And for those of you guys that do know anything about tobacco, and have rolled your own cigars or grown it yourself, you know my leaves are really, really tiny and pathetic. In my defense, I planted them several months too late in the season. I just didn't get around to it. Didn't order the seeds, all that sort of stuff. So I think I planted them in August, and I harvested these in the mid part of September, maybe a little bit after. So they've only been drying for about a month now, and they're pretty dry so far, just about done. There's several leaves that are actually ready already to roll into cigars if I so please, but I'm also just practicing with drying them as things stand because I'll be able to stick them in jars or something like that for later use for when I have sheep and such. Just practicing all of this because I'm not always going to have tobacco at the ready to deworm my critters. I also have all these different medicinal herbs for the sheep. There are so many medicinal herbs for sheep that impact sheep differently than they impact humans. Lots of cool research there, but have a whole host of plants growing for other medicinal things. Lots of really cool stuff if you really dive into the actual herbal remedies. And guys, I know some of you guys are going to be like, oh, herbal remedies, you don't believe in science. Well, sure, tell yourself whatever you want. I don't really care. I think I already shared that I was going to use chemical dewormer if I had to, and I'm not too worried about that, but think whatever you will. I don't care. I'm just talking about my own plans because, again, people ask these sorts of questions every now and then. So, tobacco, we've gone over magical trees. I've got whole hosts of different cover crops that I'll be planting between my trees. I've been experimenting with these for a very hot minute, been checking out how they impact soil health, how they increase the carbon in the soil. Guys, soil carbon, don't get me started if you don't want to fall asleep because soil carbon is the coolest thing ever, and it's magical. I'm just going to leave it there. Maybe add that it can increase how much water your land can hold by like huge margins as well, but I don't want to bore you guys too much, so I'll leave it there, even though it's exciting to me, and I'm a nerd. We all know I'm a nerd. I sell antique books. But anywho's, with all that said, there are other businesses I'm working on as well, and another reason, guys, that I'm going to Eastern Oregon, in the particular region that I'm going to, is because it actually works really well for the different businesses that I'm actually working on starting. I've been doing research on all these different businesses, been drawing up some designs for different machines that I'll be having to build myself because they don't make all the machines I need. And it's been really cool doing all this work, doing all these research projects and all these things, running all these different experiments and all these things, because it's like, okay, this is the foundation of, again, what I'm working on that should last hundreds of years if everything works out well for my master plan, because I'm just so smart. I can prepare for everything. Oh yeah. Obviously I'm not. So Lord willing, I'll also be bringing plenty of other people along on the way, because success goes to the one that has the most counsel, if you will. Proverbs talks about that one as well. I know I've mentioned the Bible several times. That's because it's sort of an important book. I recommend you guys read it. Recommend you guys get in a relationship with the guy who inspired the Bible. Hashtag God, hashtag Jesus. Reach out to him. But all that stuff being said, there is a lot of stuff that I've been preparing for, businesses that I'm going to be working on, businesses that I'm currently, let's say, in the nascent stages of working on. Been looking up all these different business plans, doing all these business plans for all the different things. It's been quite the ride. It's been quite a lot of fun, and I'm sure some of you guys are thinking, well, Caleb, if you're going to do all these great things, what about this book channel? I should just unsubscribe now because you're not into it. Well, I think I already said I'm a nerd. I'm into this. If you guys have followed my channel for any amount of time, you've heard that I love antique books. I just think they are the cat's meow. I love the entire concept of the business. I love the beauty. I love the aesthetic. It's everything I wanted and more, if you will. So I actually have the antique book business. It's like roped into all my other plans. It actually does directly benefit from the farm, in particular because something I really want to do, something I've wanted to do for years, is actually bind my own books all the way, like, from scratch. I know people say, oh, I made my, like, let's say cake from scratch, and then they bought all the ingredients from the store and then made it, which is made from scratch, sure. But when I say I make something from scratch, and I'm saying scratch, I'm saying I want to grow my own, like, I've looked into even doing papyrus for potentially trying out for wood stuff. I know for a fact I'm going to be growing linen. Linen paper is pretty cool. Maybe not quite what I'm going for, but the wood will have wood pulp, which you can make paper with. So there's lots of different ways that I'll experiment with doing paper. Part of me wants to sort of do a hybrid using linen and normal paper stuff, just because it will add a little bit more long-lasting magicness to it, if you will, because magic. Honestly, I have not done enough research on it just yet, but I've done enough research to be like, okay, I do want to have it be not just normal paper, because normal paper, I've dealt with antique books long enough. I know what kind of paper works great and what kind of paper doesn't work great. So basically, I'm going to be making books that will hopefully look beautiful 200 years later, like only a few of these do, because so many of these books, guys, 200 years later, the leather's crumbling, they are falling apart. I want to make something that can last a long, long time. And that's another thing for the linen side of things, because linen, that's one of the cover crops I'm going to be interplanting with my magical trees. Linen is fantastic. You can make cloth out of it, all these sorts of things, and also a lot of other stuff as well, including linseed oil. So it's going to be a whole lot of fun just experimenting with all that, but that's for making books. That's not the antique book business. What am I talking about? All that sort of stuff. So guys, even as I do all the other businesses, I'm going to make sure that the antique book business does continue, because again, I really enjoy this business, and actually I've thought a lot about, like, for when I am doing all these things, I'm like, okay, I want an office it's like just aesthetically everything I love, because for me, I am able to work a whole lot better when I'm surrounded by something I like, and not when I'm surrounded by 4 blank white walls that are boring and depressing. So for me, I've actually sort of made up a rough design for, I'll build my book business sort of central-ish for all the other businesses that I'm doing, and I'll be able to look out over several of those businesses from that office, but that office is going to be part of the actual bookstore itself, probably on a second floor, so I don't get bothered, but it's going to be quite beautiful based on my rough designs that I already have out for all of it. And I know I sound rather poetic, I know I sound very hopeful, all that sort of stuff, but I'm sure a lot of you guys that have been following the channel for a while are a little surprised to hear that I'm as hopeful as I am for the future, because I've talked about all these bad things. I talked about recently in a video about the economic update of this and this and this is not good, this is going to be happening soon, that's bad, this and this and this and this. Well, guys, there are a lot of good things going on in the world. Personally, for me, I am the sort of person that thinks that we are only going to see better and better times if we play our cards right. Of course, there are plenty of people that think it's going to just get worse and worse and worse, and then it'll be over. Other people are like, well, the bride is getting ready for the bridegroom, all this sort of stuff, and we have to make ourselves ready first. And, well, Great Commission, we were told to make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in all that sort of stuff. Well, if you follow those rules that we were given by Jesus, that sort of doesn't equate for things getting worse and worse and worse if you are actually following what we were told to do. So for me, I lean on the optimistic side of things, of being like, all right, if we are doing what Jesus told us to do, if we are doing everything we're supposed to be doing right, it's only going to get better and better. And if you look at 2,000 years ago when Jesus was crucified till now, I would argue that things are a whole lot better than they were back then. For one, we aren't too afraid of people coming and pillaging and taking half our family to be slaves anymore. So I count that as a win. So long as I'm not worried about anyone being enslaved in large numbers next to me, that's normally better off. Of course, we still have slavery today. That's still something we should definitely deal with and get rid of entirely, but that's just my opinion, I guess. With that said and done, though, guys, I hope this video was, I guess, sort of inspiring to show you that not every kid my age is only thinking about himself and his summer vacation. I hope it shows that there are things that you guys can concretely do to hopefully work on your own legacy, because it's a righteous man that leaves an inheritance to his children's children. Again, I'm quoting the Bible for you guys. And that's something that I think everyone should aspire to do. I think we should all aspire to leave something of value, of great value, for our next generations. And of course, not everyone can do that in a monetary way. Okay? Spend hours and hours writing out just important life lessons that your future generations can cling on to and make sure that they can have a leg up just from that. Of course, I personally think that everyone should strive to make enough money to be able to pass something on of significant value to their next generations, because that does give people an added leg up that information alone cannot do. But let's face it, not everyone can do that. However, something everyone can do I've mentioned this in other videos, guys. I like gold and silver. And since I already mentioned that I'm working on stuff that should hopefully last hundreds of years, I am looking at something that can be a store of wealth or appreciate in value over that time. So gold and silver is that magic bullet, and anyone can buy a piece of silver right now at current prices. Silver price actually is retracing as of today by a good chunk. It's down back towards $30, and I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of places are still charging, let's say, $32 for a silver round, and probably for silver eagle it's probably more like $38 or so. I don't know off the top of my head, I haven't checked, but there's a lot that you guys can do. I mean, silver on its own, I'm sure you guys are thinking, well, it doesn't go up in price enough. 200 years from now, how is that going to be worth anything? It's over. Well, people have been saying silver is only an industrial metal for at least 20 years. Well, back when I was born, silver was, I want to say, about $4, and today, as I mentioned, $30. That's a decent return. That's higher than the government stated inflation by a good margin. Gold, when I was born, was about $200, I believe. Well, it got pretty close to $3,000 this year, and I wouldn't be surprised if we still hit $3,000 by the end of the year. Last I checked, that's a pretty decent return as well. So that is something that you guys can look into yourselves. I'm not telling you guys how to invest. I'm not telling you guys to start a farm, start doing timber, to start all these different businesses. I'm not telling you to build a bookstore. I'm not telling you to buy gold and silver, or do whatever you want. Do your own research. But I am just sharing all this sort of stuff to hopefully get you guys thinking about a little bit more than what you might be thinking about right now for your particular interests, for your business, all that sort of stuff. So with all that said and done, feel free to ask questions down in the comment section below if you think that my input is at all valuable to you. Obviously, I'm not sharing everything that I'm going to be doing because this video is not nearly long enough to talk about all that, and I don't have enough voice to be able to go on that long. I can only talk for a couple of hours before my voice is toast. So obviously I'm not going to spend all that time, all that effort on a single video where I just answer a whole bunch of random questions just yet, but I can spend a whole lot more time in the comment section. Of course, if you guys reach out on the comment section 10 years from now, I might not be replying to that because I might not see it, but up until then, let's say the first week after this, I will almost guaranteed respond to your comments, so long as it's not psychotic. There are plenty of psychotic people nowadays. I don't want to respond to them because they are annoying. I'm not going to spend my time answering a fool, if you will. Let me just throw in another Bible reference there, I guess. But I hope this video was helpful. I hope it was sort of fun for you guys to personally think about yourselves of what you can do potentially to set your next generations up for success. That's sort of what I want with this whole channel, is for you guys to not just think about this as a business, but to think of this as potentially a legacy piece for your future generations. Because when you start a business, it can die when you die, or when you retire, that sort of stuff, or it can be something that you can potentially have carry on for years and years to come. So with that said and done, again, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.